Well, I think like most people, or actually most Christians, believe that the Bible is true, but I think the type of truth kind of differs from person to person. Like, I know a lot of people who would interpret the Bible literally the entire way through, and then a lot of people who are like, well, we kind of have to sift what the Bible is saying through like the fact that it's been through so many translations, or the fact that like we know that some of the Bible is narrative, some of the Bible is poetry, some of the Bible is parabolic, and that's not to say any part of it isn't true, but there are ways to interpret it that isn't like the Bible's lying about this, or the Bible's wrong about this. But even after we have that foundation of like, yes, we believe everything is best, there's a lot of different directions you can go. Like the debate that's very recently about like the verse that is like, do not lie with a man. People think it actually, or a lot of people believe that it actually reads, do not lie with a young boy, and it's condemning pedophilia. Or like, how do you feel like is the responsible way to decipher like, is this truth in a literal sense? Is this truth in an experiential sense? Etc.
Yeah. So I think for me, there's a couple of, I guess I'm pretty comfortable with differing interpretation. Like differing interpretation is a thing that happens across like current issues, like the one you referenced. Like that's a thing that's talked about a lot right now, but that's true across various denominations about baptism and predestination and all kinds of different things. There's like two tiny examples, but there's a million different things where we can differ on interpretation of Scripture.
Yeah.
I think that's always going to be the case and is acceptable. What I think, the thing that I would say is dangerous is I think there's a little bit of a common belief, or I hear this a lot, is anybody can make the Bible say anything.
That's true.
I don't think that that's true either.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a really dangerous belief. That basically that everyone's just picking and choosing. Everyone is just coming up with whatever belief system they want, basically out of the Scriptures, is a pretty commonly held thought that I hear from people. I don't think that's true. I think that temptation is in all of us to like. I go to the Bible very clearly. There's certain things that I think are good and okay, and things that aren't. That bias does exist, but I don't think you have to bring that to the Bible. I think you can actually say, I want to know the truth.
Well, there are things that are very clear, like do not steal is very clear, and I wish the Bible, I don't know, stealing is easy from Walmart, so like, and I don't want to pay money.
Have you stolen things from Walmart?
Yes.
I was a very good homeschool child. I've never stolen anything ever.
One time I accidentally stole something and I left it in a cart in the parking lot because I felt so guilty.
I was gonna say I can't imagine you actually stealing anything.
No, I accidentally forgot to scan it through and it was in the cart and I just left it
I
there.
haven't stolen anything recently.
What? Define recently.
Like probably within the first month that I got to off the wall, I stole a bunch of nail polish, and I was like,
You felt bad about it?
yeah, and then I was like, I never do it.
Just, I would be terrified.
Cut that out. That's anecdotal. But
Have you
my
ever stolen
point is
anything,
like there are
Zach?
like.
Zach's for sure stolen
I
stuff.
stole the worst thing that I ever stole, though, was from a Christian bookstore. It was I brought this. There was a cool looking ring with what's the Jesus fish? It's called an ichthys.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it is.
I think it's called an ichthys. And the ring had that on it. And I brought it to my mom. And I was like, can we get this? And she said no. And I said, cool, I'm going to get this my own way. And I took it. And one of my action figures wore it as a crown. And I have it to this day. I showed it to Kaisa a couple weeks ago.
My point is that there are hard lines and there are gray areas.
Yeah.
But when it comes to gray areas, there are only some that you're allowed to question as a Christian. Like people who are like searching for Jesus are allowed to question those things, but once you become a Christian, they're like sex before marriage is like that's technically not in the Bible. No one's allowed to question that. Homosexuality, nobody can question that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, were the days in Genesis 24 hours? That's open for interpretation. But like, what's the difference between the gray areas that are questionable and the gray areas that are like, do not ask any questions?
I think most of that is cultural because I for sure have been in places where you do not question the 24 hours. That's not in question at all.
I guess I don't.
You maybe don't believe in Jesus if you're unclear on that one. Like that's very common. I think what's questionable that I think
Do you think
a lot
it's
of
because it's sex related and that's a bigger taboo?
I think that changes all the time with culture. Like I think what culture, what's current and interesting to Christian culture, to secular culture, and anything in between is always changing. So I think the issues that are like, we can't talk about those are always shifting. I think there has been an overemphasis of sexual sin, of that being the sin that is the worst sin of all. I think that goes back 40, 50 years. I think right now a lot of that stuff would be related to homosexuality, but I think sex before marriage and all of those kinds of things were a massive deal as well. I think sexual sin as the kind of the worst thing of all is not really a new thing. I think that has been overemphasized. I think a lot of things are gray though. I think you said stealing is not gray. I think stealing could definitely be gray.
Isn't it a commandment?
Yeah, but what if you're stealing to feed someone who can't eat and is going to die? Which is the better good to save
The
someone's
Bible's
life?
not about greater good.
Oh, it absolutely
You
is.
think so?
Yeah, there's.
Like, you
Can I
think,
get a drink real quick?
like,
Before we get into this.
I'm not saying the Bible condones the greater good. I'm saying that there's lots of ethical questions.
but you think like,
The Bible would not clearly be that.
do you think you could lie for the greater good?
I think it's at least a question. Yeah. We celebrate people.
I'm
who
not
did.
saying that you're wrong. I just like, I don't think I.
We celebrate people who did like crazy. We celebrate people who would have helped free slaves.
Or like
Oh.
Abraham saying that Sarah was his sister.
Well, that one actually is not
I don't know.
really condoned, but we celebrate for sure people saved the Jews. We would all say that lying to save the life of someone who's going to be taken to a concentration camp, that there's a greater good there. I think that's real. I think we can get really philosophical and make everything about what's the greater good here. But I think there's a lot more, there are a lot of things that are gray, or could be.
But Jesus accomplished the greater good without doing any of those things. I don't know. I don't know.
How do you figure? I don't disagree with
Because
you. I
he's
just want to.
perfect.
But do you have any like examples of that? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm
I don't
curious.
know. I mean, he saved us.
Jesus was just built different.
So I think a lot of times we have the intersection of theology and philosophy, and we're sort of getting to philosophy now. Theologically, do we agree it's wrong to steal? Yes. Is it wrong to allow someone to die of starvation? Yes. Those are both biblical truths. We're supposed to care for those in need. We're supposed to not lie. Those are both biblical truths. Sometimes those biblical truths will come into tension, and you have to work out how to do that. I think that's really common, and I think you immediately have gray. As soon as that happens, you have gray areas that you have to walk through. And I think a lot of that is just, that tension may be different depending on what culture you're living in. I think Christianity and Christians and people have had that problem forever. It's just a matter of where are those gray areas?
Yeah.
Where do we find, I think right now, like the issue you brought up, like homosexuality, that's a big one right now. It's like, how do you walk through that? And I think that's always been true. I think that's always going to be true. I had that in my life about self-defense. I had to process through whether I need to be prepared to defend my family. What would I do? There's two goods. I'm not interested in hurting someone who comes to hurt me. Also not interested in my family being hurt. It's all very speculative.
Do you have guns? That's not for the video. I'm just asking.
So that was my question. Should I have a gun? Should I have a gun to defend my family? If someone comes, I live in Ohio, it's probably not going to happen, but what if it did? Everyone has to answer those kinds of questions. At some point, you get older, you answer way more of them, and life throws all kinds of things at you. But to me, I guess those philosophical things, I wouldn't tell someone who owns a gun that they're wrong, that's sinful. I just decided to not go that way. I philosophically decided what. I actually went with John Piper. He said, "You're way more ready to go home than that guy is." So we're way down the.
This wasn't even the rabbit hole that I thought we were going to go down.
We're down a way different rabbit hole, but I don't know if it's helpful or good.
It's great.
Cool. Can I get water in the break?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I'm sorry,
Let's
that
actually,
happened.
let's actually just cut everything and start a new.
Okay.